Duran taught me, or showed me, or displayed to me how important the mind is. He got into my head. I said, you know what, I'm gonna beat this guy at his own game. And that was when the problem started, because I wanted to beat him at his own game, which is standing toe-to-toe and banging away. But I wanted to get at this guy because he disrespected me.
Oh! Leonard bombing away, and Duran thinks he has won the fight. I can't believe it, Duran!
At 70, Sugar Ray Leonard is finally telling the truth. The 3 fights that everyone calls his greatest victories were actually the 3 fights he barely made it through alive. But here's what makes his story different. Those near-death moments in the ring didn't break him. They built him into one of the greatest fighters boxing has ever seen. Most legends hide their fear. Leonard is doing the opposite. He's admitting that survival, not dominance, was what defined his career, and that honesty reveals something more powerful than any knockout ever could. Let's talk about the 1980s. Boxing's heavyweight division was quiet. The spotlight moved down to welterweight and middleweight, where 4 men were destroying everyone in their path. Roberto Duran from Panama, known for punches like stones. Thomas Hearns from Detroit, tall as a giant with a right hand that could end careers. Marvin Hagler from Brockton, a machine who hadn't lost in over a decade. And Sugar Ray Leonard, the Olympic hero with the $1 million smile. These men couldn't avoid each other. Television money demanded they fight. Leonard had to walk through fire to build his legacy. There was no safe route to greatness. The survival story starts here in an era when the best had to beat the best or be forgotten. This wasn't like today's boxing, where champions can pick and choose opponents. The Four Kings era was a round-robin of violence. Every fight carried real danger. Every opponent could end your career. Leonard didn't have the luxury of building a perfect record against carefully selected competition. He had to face killers in their prime, and he had to do it over and over again. The economic structure of boxing in that era made it impossible to hide. Closed-circuit television and the early days of pay-per-view created massive paydays, but only if you fought the best. Promoters knew fans would pay to see Leonard against Duran, Hearns, or Hagler. They wouldn't pay to see Leonard against safe opponents. So Leonard's choices were simple: fight the murderers or fade into irrelevance. What makes Leonard's admission at 70 so powerful is that it reframes what we thought we knew. For decades, we celebrated his speed, his tactics, his smile. We talked about him as a tactical genius who outthought everyone, and he was. But what Leonard is saying now is that beneath all that technical brilliance was a man fighting for his life. Every round against Duran was survival. Every moment against Hearns was borrowed time. Every second against Hagler was defying the odds. This shift from the golden boy narrative to the survivor narrative matters because it's more honest. It's more human. Leonard isn't diminishing his accomplishments by admitting he barely survived. He's elevating them. He's saying that greatness isn't about making things look easy. It's about enduring the impossible and still finding a way to win. Before we dive into those 3 fights, we need to understand where Leonard's toughness came from. It wasn't just talent. It was something deeper, something forged in trauma. When Leonard was a boy in Maryland, he fell into a flooded creek. His brother watched him grab at branches as the water tried to pull him under. That moment, fighting to stay alive while nature tried to drown him, became a blueprint. The sensation of being overwhelmed by a force bigger than yourself, then clawing your way back to safety. Leonard would feel that same terror years later in a boxing ring. There was another kind of survival Leonard had to endure. He revealed in his autobiography that he was abused by an Olympic coach as a teenager. This created 2 versions of Ray. There was Ray, the hurt kid carrying a secret, and there was Sugar Ray, the untouchable champion the world loved. This split allowed him to lock away pain and fear when he needed to perform. When opponents tried to break him mentally or physically, Leonard had already survived worse in private. By the time Leonard fought Marvin Hagler in 1987, his body was falling apart. His retina had detached, requiring surgery that should have ended his career. His knees ached constantly. The fights Leonard is talking about at 70 aren't just about competitive survival. They're about a body being pushed past its breaking point and somehow holding together. Understanding Leonard's early trauma is critical to understanding his fights. Most people don't realize that resilience isn't something you're born with. It's built through surviving things that should have destroyed you. Leonard's childhood gave him a reference point for danger. When Duran was breaking his ribs, Leonard's brain had already filed away what true helplessness felt like. When Hearns closed his eye and the scorecards turned against him, Leonard knew what it meant to be seconds from losing everything. The creek taught him that panic is useless. Action is everything. The abuse Leonard suffered created another survival tool: compartmentalization, the ability to separate what's happening to your body from what's happening in your mind. When you've survived trauma by creating mental walls, you can use those same walls in a fight. Pain becomes information, not a reason to quit. Fear becomes fuel, not a reason to freeze. Leonard's ability to function under extreme duress wasn't natural talent. It was a learned behavior carved into him by experiences no child should have to endure. This is why Leonard's story at 70 resonates beyond boxing. Everyone faces moments where survival is the only option. Everyone has their own version of the creak, or the abusive coach, or the detached retina. Leonard's gift to us is showing that those moments don't define you unless you let them. They can become your foundation instead of your grave. Now let's go to Montreal, June 1980. Leonard walked into the ring as the undefeated welterweight champion, America's golden boy. Roberto Duran walked in like a man possessed. He was moving up from lightweight to prove he could conquer a new weight class. Duran didn't just want to beat Leonard, he wanted to humiliate him. Before the fight, Duran insulted Leonard's wife. He called Leonard soft. He attacked everything Leonard thought he was. This wasn't just boxing strategy. It was psychological warfare designed to drag Leonard into a street fight. Leonard made a decision that still baffles experts. Instead of using his speed and footwork, he stood flat-footed and traded punches with Duran. He wanted to prove he was tough. He wanted to beat Duran at his own game. It was one of the worst tactical choices in boxing history, and one of the bravest. In the second round, Duran landed a crushing left hook. Leonard's legs wobbled. For a split second, the fight nearly ended, but Leonard's survival instinct kicked in. He fired back immediately, not letting Duran smell the weakness. That moment, that reflex to fight back when hurt, saved him. Duran spent 15 rounds attacking Leonard's body. He leaned his head into Leonard's chest and dug short hooks into the ribs and liver. Leonard later said it felt like being hit with wet stones. Round after round, Duran broke down Leonard's body. Most fighters would have quit. Leonard survived. By the 15th round, Leonard was exhausted and behind on points. Most fighters would have just tried to last the final 3 minutes. Leonard didn't. He fought back furiously, nearly stealing the round on pure willpower alone. Leonard lost that night. The judges scored it close, but Duran won. Leonard lost his title and his undefeated record, but he survived the event itself, and that survival changed everything. Leonard realized his body could withstand the worst punishment on the planet. 5 months later, he used that confidence to outbox Duran in the rematch, force him to quit. The victory in New Orleans was born from the survival in Montreal. The lesson from Montreal goes beyond boxing tactics. Leonard learned that losing a battle doesn't mean losing the war. He discovered that his body had reserves he didn't know existed. The physical punishment from Duran became a measuring stick. If he could survive that, he could survive anything. This knowledge freed Leonard to take bigger risks in future fights because he had proven to himself that he was unbreakable. If Montreal tested Leonard's toughness, the 1981 fight against Thomas Hearns tested whether he could survive a disaster. This fight, more than any other, brought Leonard to the edge of defeat. Thomas Hearns was a nightmare matchup. He stood 6'1" to Leonard's 5'10". His reach was 78 inches compared to Leonard's 74, and he carried a right hand that had knocked out champions and was considered the most dangerous punch in boxing. Hearns could control distance with his jab and then explode with power Leonard couldn't see coming. The fight happened outdoors in Las Vegas. The heat was brutal. By the middle rounds, Leonard's left eye started swelling. It got worse and worse until it closed completely. Fighting a man with a 4-inch reach advantage while seeing out of only one eye is nearly impossible. Leonard lost his depth perception, making him vulnerable to the exact punch he needed to avoid. If you want to see why people call this survival, look at the scorecards after 12 rounds. All 3 judges had Hearns ahead. Leonard was losing by 3 or 4 points on every card. He was exhausted. His eye was shut. He had been outboxed for long stretches. By every measure, Leonard was losing the fight. Then came the corner. Between rounds 12 and 13, Angelo Dundee, Leonard's trainer, didn't give technical advice. He challenged Leonard's identity. "You're blowing it, son. You're blowing it," Dundee screamed. This is the moment resilience showed up. A normal fighter accepts being the valiant loser. Leonard refused. He saw the crisis. He was minutes away from losing everything, from being remembered as the guy who couldn't beat Hearns, and he decided to risk it all. Leonard's plan changed from boxing to destruction. In round 13, he walked through Hearns' power and landed a right hand that shook the fight to its core. He knocked Hearns into the ropes. The crowd exploded, but Hearns survived that round. So Leonard had 1 round left. Round 14. He emptied everything he had left in his body. He threw a furious combination that forced the referee to stop the fight. Leonard won, but here's why Leonard says he barely survived. If Hearns had just held on, just clinched or moved for 3 more minutes, Leonard would have lost the decision. Leonard snatched victory from a place where victory shouldn't have existed. He won from a probability of 0. That's not dominance, that's survival. Before you go, do me a favor. Drop a comment and tell me which of these 3 fights sounds the most insane to you. And if you're not subscribed yet, hit that button. You don't want to miss what happens next. 6 years later, 1987, Leonard did something nobody thought was possible. He came out of retirement to fight Marvin Hagler. This wasn't the same kind of survival as Montreal or Las Vegas. This was mental survival. This was a man with no business being in the ring, using his brain to outlast a destroyer. Let's look at how bad the situation was. Leonard had fought only once in 5 years. His retina had detached, an injury that ends most careers. He was moving up to middleweight to fight a man who hadn't lost in 11 years. Hagler had destroyed Thomas Hearns in 3 rounds. Everyone thought Leonard was going to get seriously hurt, but Leonard knew he couldn't physically dominate Hagler, so he negotiated the fight conditions to give himself a chance. He got a 20 by 20 foot ring, which was large and allowed him to move. He got 10-ounce gloves instead of heavier ones, favoring speed over protection, and he got the fight shortened to 12 rounds instead of 15 because Leonard likely wouldn't have survived 15. Leonard's strategy was to steal rounds. He would let Hagler work for the first 2 minutes of each round, surviving the pressure. Then in the final 30 seconds, Leonard would unleash flashy combinations to impress the judges. The punches didn't always hurt Hagler, but they looked good. Leonard was using psychology and muscle memory to survive the distance. The crisis moment came in round 9. Hagler realized the fight was slipping away. He trapped Leonard in the corner. For over a minute, Leonard couldn't escape. Hagler landed heavy shots. Leonard's legs looked ready to give out, but instead of covering up, which would have signaled defeat, Leonard threw a rapid-fire combination. He didn't hurt Hagler, but the sheer volume of punches made Hagler pause. Leonard used that split second to spin out of the corner. He survived the round not with power, but with bravado. The decision was split and controversial. Leonard won on 2 cards and lost on 1. Experts still debate it, but Leonard admits that if the fight had gone 15 rounds, Hagler would have caught him. Leonard barely survived the 12. He survived the skepticism of the world, the power of a middleweight monster, and the limits of his own aging body. What the Hagler fight proved is that intelligence can overcome physical decline. Leonard's body wasn't what it used to be, but his mind was sharper than ever. He understood how to manipulate perception, how to make judges see what he wanted them to see. He turned boxing into theater and survival into an art form. This mental approach to survival is perhaps the most important lesson. When your body fails you, your brain can still find a way. Let's put all 3 fights together. Against Duran, Leonard survived the destruction of his ego. He stood toe-to-toe with a man who wanted to humiliate him and made it 15 rounds. Against Hearns, Leonard survived the destruction of his body. He was behind on every scorecard with one eye closed and still found a way to win. Against Hagler, Leonard survived the doubt of everyone watching. He was old, rusty, and outsized, but he used his mind to outlast a machine. These weren't just boxing matches. They were walls of danger that Leonard had to climb. Each fight brought him to the edge of defeat or worse. But those near-death moments, those rounds where survival was all that mattered, are what forged his legend. Each of these 3 fights tested a different kind of survival. Physical survival against Duran, survival against impossible odds with Hearns, mental and strategic survival against Hagler. Together, they represent the complete spectrum of human resilience. Leonard didn't just win fights, he survived 3 different types of destruction and came out stronger each time. That's why his admission at 70 matters so much. He's revealing the full truth of what greatness actually costs. Leonard's resilience didn't end when the bell rang for the last time. After boxing, he faced opponents more dangerous than any fighter. Cocaine and alcohol addiction, depression. The same survival instinct that got him through the 14th round against Hearns helped him recognize the crisis in his own life and take action. Leonard didn't hide his struggles. He talked about them publicly, just like he's talking about barely surviving those 3 fights. That honesty is strength. By admitting weakness, he empowers other people to face their own battles. Today, Leonard's resilience lives on through his foundation. It's dedicated to helping kids fight pediatric diabetes and childhood obesity. The same energy Leonard used to survive Roberto Duran is now being used to help children survive illness. That's the positive angle here. That's the lesson. Survival isn't just about lasting through the storm. It's about using what you learned to help others. At 70, Leonard mentors the next generation of fighters. His message isn't about being undefeated. It's about being unbreakable. He teaches that surviving isn't passive. It's a violent, deliberate refusal to quit no matter how bad things look. So what does it mean that Leonard, at 70, is finally admitting he barely survived his 3 biggest fights? It means he's stripping away the golden boy image to show us the iron will underneath. He's telling us that even legends bleed fear and doubt. But greatness isn't the absence of those things. Greatness is having the resilience to endure them until the final bell rings. Leonard didn't just survive Duran, Hearns, and Hagler. He turned survival into victory. And in doing so, he taught the world something invaluable. We all face our own Durans, our own Hearns, our own Haglers. We get battered. We fall behind on the scorecards. We get old and doubt ourselves. But as long as we're still standing, we have a chance. Leonard proved that. He showed us the art of survival. If Leonard's story moved you, leave a comment and let me know what hit hardest. What fight do you think tested him the most? And subscribe if you haven't already. There are more stories like this coming, and you don't want to miss them. Thanks for watching.